Story 1. I work at Woodforest National Bank. For those who don't know, it's a bank based out of Texas, located primarily on the East Coast inside of Walmart. This story happened about a month ago. One of our usual entitled Karen customers comes into the bank demanding we print her a new debit card because she lost her old one. We issue debit cards the same day so long as they pay a debit card fee, $10 for a reprint or $15 for a new card waived for certain accounts. A reprint was a simple task, so I printed her card and sent her on her way. She then walks back into the bank because the last two numbers were slightly rubbed off. This is due to how the machine prints the cards and is pretty common. Karen, I want you to print this card again. Me, is it not working? Karen, look at the last two numbers. Other banks don't give me cards with rubbed off numbers. Me, I'm sorry ma'am, but sometimes that happens with the machine. It rubs part of the numbers off when activating the chip. Karen, I don't care, it looks terrible. Do it again. Me, ma'am, I don't think this is a good idea. We really don't have control over how the machine. Karen, raising her voice, I don't care what you have to do. Just print my card again so it looks nice. She takes a pair of scissors and cuts up the card into tiny pieces in front of me. Karen, print the card now, or do I have to close my account and contact *market manager's name *? The market manager isn't someone you would know unless you have had a conversation with him before. It's obvious she's trying to name drop him to get me to shut up and comply. Malicious compliance. I turn over to my manager and he gives me a nod. I then put on a devious smile and say, absolutely ma'am. But to ensure this won't happen again, we will need to change the numbers, so I'm going to need you to sign some things. Karen, see, was that so hard? We then spend the next 10 minutes printing out new cards until we get one that doesn't have the numbers slightly rubbed off. Each time the card isn't to her liking, she cuts it up and says to do it again. I just smile and say, sorry about this, let's try again. Each time until about 8 cards later, she finally gets a card number that isn't rubbed off. Karen, finally, this card looks good, thanks. She just leaves with a smug grin thinking she won and leaving us with her massive pile of cut-up debit cards. What we forgot to remind her of is having a completely new card generated outside of fraud or expiration cost $15 to be deducted from your account. This is made clear at account opening, and since she signed off on having all these new cards printed, there was nothing she could say. Normally I try and help people avoid bank fees, but in this case this entitled woman. A couple days later, she comes storming into the bank looking pissed. Karen, what did you do to my account? Me, I'm sorry ma'am, but what seems to be the problem? Karen, there's a bunch of debit card fees on my account. WTF did you do? Me, oh, every time you had me print a new debit card for you the other day, a $15 fee was charged to your account. The first one, where you only had me reprint the card number, was only $10. Karen, you need to reverse these fees right now before I call *market manager name * and get you fired. At this point, my manager steps in. Manager, hello ma'am, what's the issue? Karen, your dumb employee tricked me into paying over $100 worth of fees because he kept up my debit card. Manager, ma'am, could you please not yell? Also, I was there when you demanded we print you a new debit card because you didn't like the numbers being rubbed off. We have your signature on these forms stating that you wanted these cards to be printed. I will not be reversing these fees for you. Karen, then I want to close me account. Manager, okay, but first you need to pay off your negative account balance as well as your line of credit. Karen, just give me *market manager name's number this instant. Me, sorry ma'am, but we aren't at liberty to just give out his number like that. Here's the number to customer service if you would like. This is true, as he's instructed us to not give his number out to any customer who asks. The only people who need his number already have it. She takes the number, screams, I'll have your jobs for this, flips us off, kicks over a chair and storms out. We get a call from customer care later about the incident where we explain everything and scan over all the signed debit card applications. Also, she had us print 8 brand new cards and the one reprint. That cost her about $130 in fees because she demanded a new debit card. The best part is my manager likely would have just waived the original $10 fee had she just been nice and asked. Story 2. So a new grocery store opened up in our relatively small town early this summer. I've literally only been in it once grand opening before this story takes place because it's halfway downtown, and I am a rural resident who would much rather shop at a different location, which is literally the first store upon coming into town. Because of this, I had absolutely no recollection of the employee uniforms or else would have selected my clothes a touch differently. Well, I walked in with black dress pants, but they were pretty wear and tear along the bottom because everything is either slightly too long or way too short for me, and I never get around to hemming my pants, so they're usually questionable 5 or 6 months down the line. On top of this, I was wearing a light fleece jacket black from my workplace and had the company logo on the front. When I shop, I typically am so focused on what I'm doing, I don't even stray my gaze away at other people outside of a peripheral. Are we going to be in each other's way? And the like. So onwards. I'm sizing up something I'm interested in and start doing math in my head with a little aid of hand gestures. It's kind of like pencil paper math. The way I envision it, using the blank air to write. I know it's weird, but it works for me. While comparing my needs wants versus my budget in the freezer foods department, I heard a small hey behind me. Sounded like it was a bit far off, and since anyone who knows me knows to be loud hearing loss runs in the family, so I'm basically 10 or less years off from needing hearing aids barring high-pitched noises, which you'd think I was a dog with how they bring me to my knees or specifically call my name. Imagined it was none of my dang business. A slightly frustrated, "Excuse me," followed a few seconds later. I honest to God thought at that moment, geez, would you just help her? I don't want to hear her annoying tone. I was not in the best of moods, so a lot of stupid things would set me off. Finally, the back of my jacket was being pulled. What the hell? I whip around, shrugging off the hand that held me, and there's this woman somewhere along in her 40s or so, about a half-foot taller than me, so I wound up staring in the wrong place, if you catch my drift. She was definitely dressed for summer. After looking up, I'm 5'7", pushing 5'8" inches, so she was fairly taller than me, and catching a death glare. She started spouting off how rude I was for not paying attention, and I should even be reported for ogling her breasts. She was wearing denim shorts, a bikini top which her areolae were sticking out of, and a super thin white shirt that wasn't buttoned up. Oh boy. Awkward. I can't recall exactly what she wanted, looking for a specific product. I know that much, but the condescending tone pretty much made everything she said nothing more than static noise as my anger rose and rose and rose. I finally interrupted her and said, "Look, you dingleberry B*TCH, I don't work here, so leave me the hell alone." I was about to walk away, but then she grabbed me, lifted me by my jacket, and pushed me up against a freezer door up about a foot, so I'm dangling my footsies in the air, now legitimately scared, the anger flowing down and out of me instantly. Holy Toledo, she is going to kill me. She leans in and starts barking about what a pathetic piece of crap I am, and I'm going to be fired and charged for sexual harassment, and that a loser like I am is going to die alone because no one likes a fatty. I'm overweight, but not grossly obese like Jabba the Hutt. More of a, my general figure doesn't really change shape, no matter how much weight I lose. Unexpectedly, she backs up suddenly and drops me. I don't quite catch the floor, tripping and stumbling along the aisle, my shoulders taking the brunt of it. I had enough senses to control how I fell. Well, lucky me / sarcasm / she got scared because an employee driving a pallet comes around the corner, and just as I'm picking myself up off the floor, she asks if I'm all right. Fairly confused about what's going on, I limp over, turn around and point to the now fleeing entitled woman going around the opposite end of the aisle and tell her that the woman assaulted me and call the police. She panicky tells me to just stay there and sprints towards the front of the store. The freezer department is isolated as the farthest section of the store. I'm stubborn and disregard staying there and making my way to the front. It takes a few solid minutes, and along the way I hear a lot of commotion. By the time I see anything, the manager is standing in front of the exit, apparently locked automatic doors so they weren't opening, and she was squawking all sorts of crap. Other customers see me and rush over to see if I'm okay, and this crazy freaking lady just death glares at me again and calls back that I'm just faking it, and that I was a disgusting pig who was trying to take out her breasts. The manager speaks up and says, "Well, the police can look over the tapes to see for themselves." Well, the blood drained out of that woman so fast everyone instantly knew she was full of it. About 15 minutes later, the police arrived and spent another half hour doing all the procedure stuff, asking questions and making statements. They did review the tapes, of course, and asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. They hauled her off later, and the manager gave me a $250 gift card. That was definitely a win. Story 3. Context: I recently moved to a quaint neighborhood with decent-looking houses, neat fences, and well-manicured lawns. Life was pretty good around here, except for one minor detail: the self-proclaimed ruler of our little utopia, Karen. Yes, the infamous Karen, the embodiment of entitled attitudes, the lady who had a knack for making everyone's life a little less pleasant. Now, as I mentioned, I'd recently moved into this neighborhood with my 2 wonderful German shepherds. Both dogs were more than just pets. They were family, and a loyal one at that. They had their share of barking, but it was all in good fun, and usually happened when they saw a squirrel or the mailman doing his rounds. Enter Karen. The very first day she spotted my dogs, she made a beeline for me, practically leaving skid marks on the sidewalk. With an air of authority that rivaled a military general, she introduced herself as the beloved president of our homeowners association. As if that wasn't enough, she immediately launched into a tirade about how my dogs were devaluing the neighborhood. I swear, if she could have summoned a soapbox out of thin air to stand on, she would have. "Excuse me, but your dog's incessant barking is driving away potential buyers," she claimed with an exaggerated eye roll. I mustered a polite smile and assured her I would do my best to manage their barking. But who am I kidding? Dogs bark, that's what they do. I thanked her for the friendly welcome and continued with my day. But Karen was not one to be easily brushed off. She went on a mission to turn my life into a living hell, making it her personal mission to ensure my dog's every woof and whimper was met with an army of complaints. "The noise is unbearable," she'd shriek. One evening, after a certain exasperating round of emails and notes left on my door, an idea began to form in my head. What if I set up a camera to capture the dog's behavior and prove that Karen was exaggerating? Maybe, just maybe, I could show her that my dogs were not the canine harbingers of doom she painted them to be. Setting up the camera was easy enough, and I watched the footage with bated breath the next morning. There they were, playing in the backyard and yes, barking occasionally, but it was all in good fun, not excessive and not loud by any means. No doubt, they were just being themselves, happy pups enjoying life. Days turned into weeks, and Karen's complaints escalated like a boiling pot of pasta. Her grievances extended to things like the positioning of my garden gnome and the choice of paint color on my front door. It was like living in an alternate universe where the most mundane things became matters of life and death. One fateful night, as I lay in bed, I heard an odd rustling from the backyard. A gut feeling told me something wasn't right. I raced to the window, and lo and behold, there she was, Karen, skulking around in the dark and tossing something into my yard. My heart pounded as I watched, my shock quickly turning to anger. I knew what this was. It wasn't a prank. This was dangerous, malicious behavior. She was attempting to poison my dogs. My initial reaction was a mix of rage and shock. How could anyone stoop so low? But then, a thought crossed my mind that sent a shiver down my spine. What if she succeeded? Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator listened to my frantic explanation while I was rushing downstairs to make sure my assumption was right and assured me that they would send a police unit right away. The shock made me forget that my dogs were asleep inside the house and thankfully not anywhere near the yard. But I just couldn't take any chances, to be honest. And there it actually was. Right where she had thrown that mysterious item was a couple of fishy-looking pieces of meat. I carefully examined them, and I'm 90% sure that my intuition is spot on. I mean, who would in the middle of the night sneak into someone's yard and throw chunks of meat like these to the dogs they claimed made their lives a living hell? No one. She was trying to kill my dogs for sure. My mind was racing as I stood there, staring at the pieces of meat in my hand. My heart pounded in my chest. I was beyond furious. This wasn't just an annoyance anymore, it was a threat to my family, and I had to take action. The short walk to Karen's house felt like an eternity. I raised my hand and knocked on her door, my knuckles hitting the wood with more force than I intended. A moment later, the door swung open, and there she stood. "What do you want now?" she huffed while crossing her arms. I didn't waste a moment. My voice was cold, laced with anger as I held up the pieces of meat for her to see. "I found these in my yard, Karen. Poisoned meat meant for my dogs." She feigned innocence. "Poisoned meat? What are you talking about? Why would I do such a thing?" My patience was running thin, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "Cut the crap, Karen. I saw you throwing them into my yard." Her expression faltered for a split second. "You must be mistaken. I have no idea what you're talking about." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. But inside, I was seething. "Listen carefully, Karen. I'm not just your new freaking neighbor with barking dogs. I'm a police officer and a K-9 handler at that. I know exactly what you were trying to do, and I won't stand for it." Her eyes widened in genuine surprise this time, and before she could react, I continued, "You're under arrest for attempted harm to my dogs." She stammered, "You can't do that. You have no evidence." Right as she said that, I saw the flashing lights of police cars approaching, their sirens growing louder. I held my ground and, as she tried to slam the door shut, 2 uniformed officers appeared, swiftly moving to restrain her. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempted harm to animals and trespassing," one of the officers declared after they were briefed on the situation. She struggled against their grip, but the officers were firm and resolute. With Karen in the back of the police car, the officers turned to me. I thanked them, and they went on their way. The following weeks were a mixture of tension and anticipation as the legal proceedings against Karen unfolded. As the court date approached, I was called in to provide my testimony. The courtroom was filled with a hushed atmosphere as I recounted the events that had transpired. I described finding the tainted meat, my confrontation with Karen, and the subsequent arrest. Karen's defense lawyer attempted to poke holes in my account, questioning the clarity of the security footage and trying to cast doubt on my credibility as a police officer. However, the evidence was compelling, and the judge seemed unmoved by their attempts. When it was time for Karen to take the stand, she attempted to spin a story of innocence, painting herself as a victim of misunderstanding. Her performance was dramatic, complete with theatrical sighs and feigned shock. But her demeanor didn't seem to resonate with the jury, and it was clear that her actions were catching up to her. The prosecution presented the evidence as well as testimonies from neighbors who had been disturbed by her behavior and complaints. Even some of her fellow homeowners association members expressed their concerns about her extreme reactions. It became increasingly evident that her actions were far from justified. Just so you know, if the poisoning attempt is deemed to be particularly malicious, intentional, or if it leads to significant harm or death of the animal, it could be treated as a felony, and that's exactly how it was treated. The amount of poison found in those pieces of meat were enough to put down a damn elephant. She didn't mean for them to have some stomach ache or something. She was intentionally trying to end them. Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ended up getting dragged out of the courtroom as she started breaking down and crying when she heard the sentence. Let me just say that life in our neighborhood would never be the same, at least for me. But at least now, it had a chance to be a little more peaceful, a little more welcoming, and a lot less under the rule of a certain entitled Karen. Story 4. Some 10 years ago, I was switching jobs after spending over 7 years at my previous one. I decided I was done with printers and related work and wanted something new. I found a company that supplied CCTV systems, security, and fire alarms. The company had branches in several larger cities across the country. The pay was lower than my previous job, but I figured it wasn't too bad, and I really wanted a change. I was contracted for a 3-month trial period, which is a common practice in my country. This type of short-term job contract usually lasts 1 to 3 months, has the same legal terms as a regular contract, but often limits some company benefits like private health care or gym passes. After the trial period, a decision would be made on whether I would stay or not. My boss was the regional manager, and I had a co-worker who had been hired earlier. Our branch had only been open for a few months. It's important to note that the company only dealt in business-to-business sales, no retail. We didn't even have a fiscal printer, which is mandatory for retail sales in my country. All our clients were businesses specializing in electrical equipment installation, as per company policy. In my country, businesses are registered in a central database, and specifying the type of services offered is a legal requirement. This classification influenced pricing levels. Electrical companies received better prices than, say, a flower shop. The company used a customer relationship management system, where we were required to log every interaction with our clients. When I asked my regional manager how detailed these logs should be, the following conversation ensued. Me. So, do I only need to note sales, or should I include other interactions as well? Regional manager. Everything. Each call, each visit, each sale, and you need to schedule the client's next visit or call. You are required to contact each client at least once a week to maintain relationships and log everything in the customer relationship management. It's linked to the phone billing, so we know whether you've made the calls or not. Me. So, I'm supposed to call each client at least once a week for a chat. Regional manager. Yes, and make notes in the customer relationship management. Me. You realize calling that often will annoy most clients? Regional manager. This is company policy. We want our clients to feel cared for, and it's your job to do it. Anyone who has dealt with frequent sales calls knows that this approach is not the best way to build positive relationships. We all get tired of banks or phone companies offering us great deals. But it wasn't my place to question company policy. I split the registered clients with my coworker and found a few more potential contacts online. For the next few weeks, I called each client, first introducing myself as their new sales representative and asking if I could check in periodically. I didn't specify how often I would be checking in. After a few weekly calls, some clients stopped answering. Others blocked me, I could tell, because calls went straight to voicemail, and some became openly annoyed. They expressed their frustration through various euphemisms and insults, my favorite being, "I kindly ask you to embark on a journey to the land of discomfort." Others were more direct, telling me they would contact us if they needed anything. I logged every call in the customer relationship management as instructed. However, to avoid unnecessary attention, I refrained from quoting the insults and instead wrote something like, "Client unhappy with frequent contact. Next call scheduled for date." Despite following instructions, this approach didn't win us any favors with the client base, with one exception that didn't make much of a difference. Since we had antagonized most of our clients, we didn't generate many sales. Consequently, we weren't allowed to keep much inventory in stock. When clients visited our store, the shelves were mostly empty, making it impossible to assemble even a basic CCTV setup. For example, we might have one DVR, 2 cameras of the same type, and 1 hard drive for the DVR. We received stock replenishments twice a week, so if a client placed an order on Thursday, it wouldn't arrive until Tuesday afternoon at the earliest. This often led clients to cancel their orders. After about 7 or 8 weeks, I called a client, let's call him Red, to check if he needed anything. Just as I was about to hang up, he answered. Me. "Hi, this is Ed from Company X. Can I take a moment?" Before I could finish, Red interrupted furiously. Red, are you serious? I nearly fell off a ladder thinking it was something important, and it's you again? Didn't I tell you not to bother me? Are you stupid? He continued with a creative tirade of insult. When he finally paused, I calmly responded, Me. I'm sorry you find these calls disturbing, but it's our company's policy to maintain regular contact with our best clients. Red had never actually bought anything. Red, I don't care about your company's policy. Give me your supervisor's contact information. Me. Yes, sir. I happily provided my regional manager's name and phone number. Red likely jotted down the information and hung up without another word. I duly noted the interaction in the customer relationship management, writing, Client angry, requested supervisor contact, complied. About half an hour later, my regional manager called me. Regional manager, did you call Red today, me? I did, as per instructions. Regional manager, okay, don't call him again. It seemed Red had given my regional manager an earful about the company's policy. The following week, a client who didn't mind my calls walked into the store and asked, I hear you're closing up shop. My coworker and I exchanged puzzled looks and asked where he had heard that. He vaguely replied, That's the word around town. We assured him we hadn't heard anything about it. After placing an order, he left. When I submitted the order for the next shipment, I received a call from the HQ warehouse. HQ. Hi, did you order items, me? Yes. Is there a problem, HQ? Yeah, kind of. All your deliveries are on hold, and we can't ship anything to you. I put two and two together, thanked them for the information, and shared it with my coworker. She contacted the regional manager, who claimed it must be a mistake and told us not to worry. That Friday, the regional manager arrived at 9, and we opened at 8 o'clock and went straight to the point. Regional manager, here are the papers relieving you from work as of Monday. Today, we pack up all the stock and equipment. A truck will arrive at 2 p.m. to pick everything up, and the store will be closed. Work relief is a document stating that while you remain employed and receive pay and Social Security benefits, you don't have to work. It doesn't count against your annual vacation days. We get 26 paid vacation days per year. It's typically used when an employee is being terminated with a notice period but isn't required to continue working. Since I had 2 weeks remaining in my trial period, I was given the remainder of the time off with pay, and my contract simply ended. My coworker, who had a 2-week notice period, received the same arrangement. I listed my brief time at this company as Branch Closing Specialist on my LinkedIn profile, a more fitting title than the Technical and Sales Specialist stated in my contract. The company still exists, but has scaled back its branches and, as far as I know, has relaxed its policies. I moved on to a different industry, cable TV, before returning to the CCTV field, where I spent 4 years at a company with regular clients and only called them when necessary. Story 5. When I was in 10th grade, I got into refereeing football for a little league in town. I got hired by a random booster club mom, and she tells me they pay us in cash out of the snack cart money, a fancy part of town selling Voss and stuff. But hey, no problem, I was 16, getting $120 cash every Saturday sounds nice. So the owner of the league, we'll call him D from here, was a generally nice guy and had a son on a team. D was the guy living all of his failed childhood through his 9-year-old kid. The season was going great, except when I had to ref his games. He would get mad at any call involving his son, no matter what happened. If his kid was on the line and went off to the side, we were expected not to call it. Well, I like to make things as fair as possible for kids, so I would always call it. This would set him off, and he would come running from the sidelines yelling at me. I tried to talk to him multiple times, but his reply was always the same. It's my league, so it's my rules. So I moved on and just kept doing me. The season was winding down and his kids' team happened to make it into the championship game. The head coaches got to choose one referee each. D chose Doug. Doug's cool. I liked Doug, and the other coach chose me. D calls me midweek telling me there was going to be a NFL rep there to do the coin toss and evaluate the league for a sponsorship. Annoyed with his mid-game disruptions, I decided to have some petty revenge and try to piss off D in front of the rep. On the day of the game, I show up and act just like always. Get everything set up, then call out the captains. Out comes D with his son and the other coach and his captain. We got everything started, and at first I let the little things go. I feel giddy, but I know I have to let the kid win a bit so he really feels the burn. The score was tied with 4 minutes left when I saw an opportunity to strike. It was 4th down on their own 15. D's son was at quarterback, and instead of taking the snap from center, he said hike and picked up the ball. Normally I would let this go, but it was D's kid, so I tossed my flag. Expecting a 5-10-yard run, you could imagine I was a bit surprised when he took it all the way for an 85-yard TD. Everyone on their sidelines goes crazy, including D, when the other coach starts yelling, "Hold up, flag, there's a flag." I call a meeting in the middle of the field and explain what happened. D wasn't having it, he was staying surprisingly calm, and he said I could either declare it a TD or take off my uniform. So screw it, I quit. I'm waiting for the booster lady to pay me when she gets a call and says, "D told me not to pay you." I waited till D was available and had it out with him when he made it clear that I was paid under the table and that I could basically go get screwed. Time for some serious revenge. I talked to that NFL rep on the way out and told him what's going on, and he seemed a little pissed off. Then I went ahead and gave a call to the IRS and gave them all the information I had. I forgot about it for a few weeks. Then I got a call from Doug asking if I was the one that called him in, and he explained that D had 6 other businesses that had a lot of under-table dealings. He ends the call by saying, "That was pretty screwed up. It was just a little league football game. It didn't have to end like this." D had a multi-million-dollar house, 2 nice cars, and a loving family, and $120 screwed him out of it all. Story 6. Back in the early 1980s, I had a credit card from one of the banks in my home state. At the time, I lived a few states away, so I made it a habit to send any payment around the 1st of the month, well before the due date on the 15th. So far, so good, right? Well, not quite. You see, the office where you sent the check was on one side of the state, while the main office billing center was on the opposite side. This was also back in the day before computers were directly connected, so digital tapes had to be physically transported between the offices. This arrangement led to frequent headaches for me. Every now and then, the mail might be delayed, and I would get an unpleasant phone call from them on the 16th about my supposed late payment. It became increasingly frustrating to explain that I had already sent the payment, only to be met with an unfriendly attitude. The final straw came one day when I arrived home, checked my mail, and found my bank statement, which included my canceled checks. Sure enough, there it was, my payment for the credit card, sent well before the due date. About 10 minutes later, I received a phone call. The woman on the other end began reprimanding me for not paying on time and emphasized that this was not the first time they had contacted me about it. I had reached my limit. I responded, "Ma'am, I am literally holding a check to your bank that was canceled 4 days ago. My bill has been paid, and I am not going to listen to any more of this." At that point, I decided enough was enough. It was time for a bit of creative retaliation. I had recently acquired another credit card, a much better one, so I didn't need this particular card anymore. However, instead of canceling it outright, I chose to make things inconvenient for them. I sent in the remaining balance and deliberately overpaid by 1 cent. Since the card wasn't due to expire for another 8 months, I left it open. This meant that every month, they were required to send me a statement showing the 1 cent overage. As the card approached its expiration date, I finally canceled it. Shortly after, I received a check from the bank for the overage, a grand total of 1 penny. Naturally, I cashed it. For 8 months, I made them go through the process of printing and mailing statements, then issuing and processing a check for a single cent. Needless to say, the effort and cost to the bank far exceeded the value of that penny.